Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name is April Seifert, and I am your host. This week, as we begin this episode of the podcast, I want to encourage you to think back to a time in your life when you were thinking about what your goals for your adult life would be. Now, for many of us, that checklist included some of the following: have a house, get married, have a kid or maybe more than one kid, get a successful career, work your way up the corporate ladder, things like that. And for many of us, you might find that now that you've achieved some of those things, you might feel similar to this week's guest.
You set your goals for your life. Mine, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have kids, I'm going to progress in my career, I'm going to be happy. But you get to this point and you're like, okay, so the stuff I had on the list, I've got them now. Mm-hmm. Am I done? Is this... Wait, now what?
How many of you can relate to that? I know I definitely can. There have been times where I have looked at, and these are typically times just before I enter a big transition in my life or before I feel like I need to cause a big transition in my life. There have been times where I've looked at it thinking, there has to be more than this. This cannot be all there is because I still don't feel like I'm done. And this week we are talking about exactly that. This week you are going to meet an amazing woman by the name of Stephanie Pierce. And she is all of the things she just talked about. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a very successful businesswoman in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And she is the founder of this yet to be named amazing meetup of women who are all there to better themselves, find themselves, talk about important topics, learn from each other, and support one another in their goals. It is such an incredible conversation that I had with her. I felt like there was so much wisdom in that room. But even beyond that, so much permission in that room for each and every one of us to be exactly who we are and to do the things that fill us up. Us individually. It is such a great conversation. I am so excited for you to meet Stephanie Pierce. Stephanie, I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We have been trying to schedule this for a little while and I had to move it around and whatever. So I'm so excited that we actually got to make it happen today. And I'm so thrilled to introduce you to everybody. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then we will dive into the awesome stuff that you're doing these days.
So my name is Stephanie Pierce. And maybe before I get started, I really want to take a second to thank you, April, for giving me, this opportunity to hear from other women and kind of talk about what we're doing, because I do think we learn from each other. So I am, I'll talk about my personal life first, because that's way more interesting. So I'm a mother of 3. I have 2 stepdaughters, so we're a blended family. They're 16 and 13, and then my husband and I have a daughter together who is 7. And so as you can imagine, with 3 girls, pretty busy. We live in Edina. All of our kids go to school in Edina. And it's been great. We moved a couple of years ago from Eden Prairie. My husband and I have only been married for almost 8 years. So, I kind of feel like I'm still new to the whole thing. And it's a learning every day. When you get married at 38 after having a career, and then you walk in, you're like, kids, husband, they're all in my space. It's been an interesting transition. So that's on the personal side. I have a wonderful husband, really great kids. We have a lot of fun as a family. On the professional side, I have worked for essentially one company for my entire career. So I've worked for General Mills for 23 years.
That's amazing.
My first few years were in engineering, which is my undergrad degree. And then I transitioned into HR, and it was really just a cross-functional that ended up being my career for the last probably now 18 years. What's interesting, it's not uncommon at General Mills to be there for a long time. Mm-hmm. What's interesting within our family is my husband has worked at Cargill for 26 years.
Wow.
And I'm 46. So it's like literally we're unicorns. We have spent all of our careers with one company each. And that has been great for the both of us because we have these amazing relationships with the people who work at our organizations. But we do sometimes look at each other like, do we really only know kind of one way of thinking about things because we've really only spent kind of time in one world? But I do human resources. Most of my career has been spent as a business partner. So that's essentially, I spend time with the salespeople or the finance people or the marketing people and kind of work them through talent development, any type of employee relations issues. And now I'm doing more on the talent side. So building our top talent, developing leaders. So I have spent a lot of my career as an HR person with employees of all ages, employees of all stages in their careers. And you learn a lot. Even when you work at one company, there's a lot of people that flow through there. And it can be super rewarding work. So that's kind of who I am and what I do. We have big jobs. It's a big job. I spend a lot of my time managing the work and then managing the house. So it's busy.
Yeah, I believe that. When you transitioned to HR, I'm curious about this. Mm-hmm. That role, I spent a bit of my corporate time in an HR related role as well. There's so much there around the connection between people and making sure that people come to work feeling fulfilled or as much as possible and feeling supported as much as possible in that area. Was that a driver for you? Was that something you considered as you were making that shift?
So I'll be honest, that I would love to tell you, April, that it was a super thoughtful transition. I was 23 and it literally was, you're in this entry-level engineering program, Stephanie. It's time to do something different. I was like, HR seems cool because in my mind, HR was, I'm going to go back to campus, University of Illinois, and I'm going to talk to women engineers and engineers of color, and it's going to be great. That's HR, right?
I love it.
That's not HR. It's not HR. It could be. It wasn't the HR job that I was getting into. So I made this transition thinking I'm just going to try something new, but I don't know that I had given a lot of thought into the whys and wherefores. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's something to be said about kind of walking in and testing and learning.
Yeah. Because
if somebody were to bring that to me today as an older person, I would think about it and marinate on it and maybe miss out on something. At that point in my career, I'd only been working for a year or two, right? It's like, sure, yeah, HR, bring it on. Here's what I would tell you. I was an industrial engineer as an undergraduate degree, and I really focused on design for manufacturability, which is a little bit more engaging with people than other forms of engineering. So for me, making the transition, I had spent, I worked in a plant. So I had spent this time on the plant floor with employees. Now I'm coming in as the HR person. They had a lot more respect for who I was because I knew how the system ran. And in some cases, I put that pneumatic scale in there. I know how it works. And they hadn't seen that from an HR person. So that the ability to connect with me, I think, was different because they had seen me in a different light.
Totally.
So that helped, I think, with the transition, but I had a lot to learn. There's rules and regulations around employment law and things that I did not have a ton of background in. I was surrounded by phenomenal people, but I learned a lot about myself in that time. Just how do you ask the right questions to understand what's motivating someone to make a decision to say they want to leave the organization, to make a decision to do something inappropriate at work. Like, what's the motivation? What's happening behind that? It's not unlike what we do as parents, to be completely honest. But adult learning is different than kid learning. Although I have used some of the same language on adults that I use on kids. But
sometimes it helps.
You have to. But it was a transition that I think was truly divine, because what I have, just after only a year or two in HR, I really felt like this is my sweet spot. And again, I didn't necessarily pick it. It was just time to do something different. But it ended up being something that I was good at, something that liked me back. The ability to build relationships quickly is important. The ability to be able to speak to people at all levels in the organization is important. And that becomes important in life, right? When I'm working with the PTO at the girls' school, and there's 3 of them, being able to connect with people quickly is super important. And so I think it's a great skill that you get, is the ability to engage with people quickly, to develop relationships quickly. Because in HR, you got to get people to trust you quick, so that you can really help understand, how am I going to help you? Like, no one's going to talk to you if they don't trust you. And some people build their career on never speaking to an HR person.
Interesting.
And others, and some of that has to do with the HR people they've met, right? I feel really good about the relationships that I've built, and the fact that people feel comfortable and confident to come and talk to me about what's going on, and they know I'm going to give them the real deal.
I love it. And so all that you're saying, and folks that are listening to this, I have a little bit of background that you all don't have, which is, typical. I kind of follow folks around the internet or have a quick chat with them before we, have the opportunity to sit down. And I know a bit about some of the work that you've been doing recently outside of your corporate job, and everything that you're telling me about the pieces of HR that you're really good at and the pieces that light you up there. I can imagine that parlays over beautifully into the work that you're doing today outside of the corporate setting. So I'd love if you'd share with us a little bit about what you're doing, outside of your job.
So here's what happened. And I am imagining that this is a very similar story to a lot of people. So you set your goals for your life. Mine, I'm going to get married, going to have kids, going to progress in my career, going to be happy. And
that nice path.
Right. And go, Steph, go.
Go do the thing.
So some of those things took a little bit longer than I had anticipated. But you get to this point, you're like, okay, so the stuff I had on the list, I've got them now. Am I done? Is this, wait, now what? And when am I going to have time to think about that? Because, the question I get all the time is, oh my gosh, Stephanie, you're on the PTO at the kids' school. It seems like everybody in the community knows who you are. You've got this full-time job that's not a teeny job. It's a big, giant job. You've got 3 kids. You're working the blended family thing, which has its own interesting dynamics.
Totally.
How do you have time to get anything done? And I think about this a lot, because there are people doing way more than me that are getting a whole bunch of stuff done. And my answer has always been, I prioritize. And, I know that everything can't be done at 100%, 80%. And really right now, I got to a point where I'm exhausted. I've pooped myself out.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure that everything that I have going on right now, as it stands today, is what I want to do going forward. I don't know. But I just had the dooziest time, April, trying to figure out, how do I figure out then like you feel like you're at this crossroads, right? And you've got to make a step, but I don't know how to make the step. And what was ironic to me is I'm in HR. Like I spend my days helping people answer this very question. And so, I mean, it was, I mean, honestly, years of trying to figure out, okay, do I just want to, I like HR. Are there aspects of HR that I really want to focus in on? And that's what I want to do. Or do I need to do something totally different? Or I really enjoy being a mom a lot. It's fun and it's hard work. It's super rewarding. Do I want to do that? I couldn't figure out. And I kept asking people, how do I figure this out? It is killing me. And so what I did was I said, you gotta trust friends. So I will tell you my hands down biggest learning. And I think one of the things that I've done right in my life is I have surrounded myself with amazing people.
I love it.
Primarily women, but there's a couple dudes in there that I would definitely have to give a shout out to. But I have surrounded myself with women who really have given me great sound advice. And, I had a friend of mine, I sat down with some friends and I'm like, you guys, what do you think I'm good at? And they came up with all kinds of things. You should be a talk show host and you should write a book and you should do all these things. But it all fell into the scheme of spending time with people, bringing people together.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's something there. I don't know what it is. I'm going to hold on to that. And then sure enough, when I moved to Edina, I met a friend who said, and I started talking to her about things that I like to do. And she's like, I need you to meet another friend of mine because the two of you are like saying the same things. You're literally soul sisters. So I met her friend. She and I started talking and just the energy of a like-minded person.
Yeah.
We said there's such power in women. And, we're kind of taking a hit right now as women. There's a lot going on that is kind of pushing us down. If it's not, things related to Me Too, if it was just, there was a lot going on for us as women. And we were kind of becoming a house divided. And she and I were talking about the power that you get when women come together for good. So we said, let's not make it complicated, right? And what was holding me down was I needed a 15-point plan because I'm a 15-point plan kind of person. That's how I manage my life. I'm getting all this stuff done because there is a plan, a process. It's on a spreadsheet. And sometimes you need a spreadsheet and sometimes you don't. And so we said, let's invite some friends, get them in a room, have some great food, have some great drinks. Let's talk to them about if we're going to bring women together, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
So we brought about 40 women together.
That's not like I found 3 friends on my block and we came together. You found 40 people.
We did. So here was the thing that was interesting. When I sat down to think about who would I invite, I was like, wow, I know a lot of super amazing women. So there were 3 of us. We brought our friends together. Everyone came to my house. And we had this amazing time where women who were meeting women who were very different than them.
Yeah.
Women were meeting women who were very similar. So I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a working mom. I'm African American. I'm not. I've got kids. I don't have kids. My kids are out of the house. All my kids are under 5.
Yeah.
And so women that you probably see every day, but maybe didn't have access to. And so we started talking about things like, it's challenging to live in Minnesota if you're not from Minnesota, because you get here and everyone seems to be all buddied up. And if you didn't go to the local ECFE class, you're kind of screwed. So people were like, it's so nice and refreshing to spend time with women who are kind of outside of my zone, but they're doing all these amazing things. So there were women starting businesses and, when we're in transition, we need support. So we sat and we chatted and I had a survey because I'm that person.
Hey, I'm that person too. So
people gave us a litany of things they wanted to talk about. Probably the most interesting thing that people said was, how do I deal with anxiety and depression? It's a big one. And, anxiety and depression about a lot of different things, but anxiety and depression nonetheless. So we did it again. We got people together a second time. And this time was a little bit more informal, smaller group. And what we found in that second one is it wasn't quite as impactful because we did it at a shop. There wasn't enough time for women to connect. Yeah. And so there's something personal about being in someone's house and somebody opening up their home to you. So round 3,
this is becoming a thing now.
It's now
right?
a thing.
This is a thing now.
After the first one, people were like, we want it, we need it, we want it. And that surprised me because I'm like, doesn't everybody have friends that they can go and talk to? And one of the ladies said to me, I do have friends. And that was one of the first questions we asked. Do you feel like you have a group of women you can talk to? And almost everyone said yes. But, a couple of the ladies who responded said, I do, but they're all kind of like me. I want to hear something different.
Yeah.
And I know that there are women out there who are doing some amazing things. So fill me up.
Yeah.
And women feel guilty sometimes about doing stuff for themselves.
100%. Always.
Now, I was not there for the first 38 years of my life because I was single. I was like, I'm going to the spa. I'm going to the spa again. I'm going to the spa again. And I didn't have to sign off with anybody. After I got married and had kids, I was like, oh, can I go away for 3 days to a destination spa? That seems so selfish. And what I realized is I am unpleasant when I have not gotten some time for myself.
Say that in such a pleasant way.
If my husband would hear, he would be like, he's literally like, when's the next spa trip? Because you seem a little edgy. You got a twitch. There's a lot happening. And so what I realized was I need that for me. Now, that's not everybody. Everyone doesn't need that. But I needed a minute or a few days to either go away with my friends or spend time on my own. It was important for me to recharge. And what I got from spending time with these women was, that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Was that common that you heard that from a lot of women who were there?
What was interesting is they had different things that they needed to do. So there were quite a few who just needed that girls' trip.
Yeah.
Some said, I don't have anybody to go on the girls' trip with because I have friends who don't feel like they can take the girls' trip. Their kids are too young, whatever the situation is. But I asked a question on the survey, would you be interested in a women's only spa trip? Literally everybody said yes, and can we go tomorrow? Oh. And what I heard from some of the ladies, I have great friends, but they don't want to do that, Stephanie. They don't want to go, they don't want to spend the money to go on a spa trip, but I do. Mm-hmm. So if I could do that with some like-minded people, because P.S., all your friends are amazing, that would be great. And so what I picked up was we like to spend time with each other. However, there was a caveat to that, which was I need to feel like I'm getting something out of it. Mm. So I either need to be meeting some interesting people, I either need to be furthering if I'm kind of going through a transition and I don't know how to do it, I need to know that this is time well spent. Because the one thing that none of us have is just a lot of time to hang out.
That's where the permission comes from, is
right.
That it's a I don't want to say useful, but it's a fulfilling experience. There's right. something there. There's substance there, it sounds like.
Well, and it was, I think what I heard from around the room is, I got to figure out what my thing is. And then own my thing, mm-hmm. appreciate my thing, and activate. It's kind of like you got to know you, be you, and then do you. And that looks different for all of us. So I know I'm an only child, and I got married later in life, which is only important because I spent a lot of time on my own. And as extroverted as I am, and as much as I enjoy being with people, when I'm at work, 10 hours a day doing HR, which is people focused, mm-hmm. all day, every day. Then you come home and you got kids. They're like, hey, homegirl, now it's our turn. So it's homework. And I got 2 older ones. It's boys. And I need to be fully present. And then, oh, by the way, I'm married. So I got this dude who also wants to talk to me too. And so you get to the end of the day and I'm wiped. I'm literally wiped.
Yeah.
And so I have a sitting room in my house. It's right off of our bedroom. And it is my space. I go in there. I watch mindless TV. I'm a huge Murder, She Wrote fan. All my friends know that. I like Murder, She Wrote. I like mystery TV without a lot of blood and gore. But I just sit in there and I just release. And they know in my house, with the exception of the 7-year-old, that this is my space.
Mm-hmm.
I might have a glass of wine, but it's my time. And it fills me up. It gives me that moment to get it together. And so we've been holding these sessions, and so we do them, they'll be topic based. So we did women's wellness and we had a panel. And so I had a woman there who kind of focuses on kind of Eastern and Western medicine. So she's kind of mental and physical health. Then I had a woman who's she's a PT, because if I had a dime for every woman who had a back or knee issue, I would be independently wealthy.
Yes.
And then I had a woman there who was a therapist, psychotherapist, so all about kind of mental. And we had the panel, we probably could have talked for hours. In an hour and a half, I'd cut it off because I was trying to be respectful of everybody's time. But just then we had another one on just this whole concept of finding you. One of the things I started reading and in my spare time. And one of the things that always perplexed me is people would say, every woman has a purpose and you got to find your purpose. And I was like, oh, crap. Right?
Is
this like finding your, like that one soulmate? Like I can't. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want to think to myself that there's only one thing that I'm supposed to do. And now it's good luck, Steph. Find that one thing. Like I can't. And so I'm like, I get where we're going with that. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to put the pressure on myself that I have to. It's like find that one special person or find that one special thing. I'm going to do this thing and see what it is, but I'm not going to put the pressure on myself that there's one thing I just got to find, because that was kind of stressing me out. And so I love this. What I have found is you bring women together. We love talking to each other, and we quickly realize, so let me see if I've got this straight. You don't look like me. I work, you don't. I'm African American, you're Caucasian. I'm in a blended family, you're not in a blended family. I'm from Chicago, you're not. And you sit down and you realize we don't have any of those stuff you fill out a form. Mm-hmm. None of that's the same.
Yeah, we're not checking the same boxes at all. But
we have a ton in common when we start talking about other things. Like, whether you have kids or not, women are always in transition. Right? Trying to figure out. So when you don't have kids, you're trying to figure out if you want to have kids. If you're not married, you're trying to figure out if you are going to get married. And if you want to get married, what do you want to do? Once you have that stuff, if that's the stuff that you wanted, then you're trying to figure out, am I in the right career? Is this not the right career? Is not working what I want to do? Or do I want to work? Like there's always a question that we're trying to answer. Mm-hmm. And so what I love being able to talk to women about is how we work through those transitions in a way that works for us, in a way where we feel supported.
Yeah.
In a way where we get an answer that we can feel good about, even if it's not the same answer as the person sitting next to you. I love that. And what I realized too is my job and the fact that I like to engage in the community. So as a woman of color, I feel a special obligation, sense of purpose that I have to make this world better for the African American women who are going to come up after me. So my daughters and their friends and their daughters, et cetera, et cetera. And I blow that out even to say for all girls, right? I have a special emphasis on, the women who are in my family and who I have seen struggle a little bit more. But I feel like I've been given a lot, and both from a career perspective, from a family perspective, from a friend perspective, and how do I help those that perhaps haven't? Mm-hmm. How do I help them? So I will talk to people, April, and they'll tell me what's going on or what they're thinking about. And inevitably, I'll say, I've got somebody that I want you to meet. Because the thing that I realized early on as I was doing this work is I don't always have the answer. Right? If you're a corporate woman and you're trying to figure out how to move through your career, I got you. Right? That I got 23 years. I got you covered. But for other people, if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a new business, I don't know that I may not have all the answers, but I know some people who do. If you have some health ailments or issues that are plaguing you or someone in your family, I know some people who can help, who have answers to that. If you've got aging parents and you're trying to figure out what to do, if you're new to Minneapolis and you're trying to figure out how to acclimate to the cities, if you're in nonprofit and you're trying to figure out, how do you make your way in that world?
Mm-hmm.
What I have found is I'll talk to people. I'm like, oh, you should chat with fill in the gap. She's amazing. She's a wonderful person. And then what you quickly build this community of women who are helping each other, and we don't even know that we're doing it. That's the part that I love the most. Is it's not always the person you need to talk to is somebody who's got a PhD in something.
Yep.
Sometimes the person you need to talk to is a person who's just gotten to the other side.
Yeah.
Or they're in the same place as you, and you could probably talk to each other and move yourself forward. So when I moved to Edina and I met this woman who wanted to do these women initiatives too, she and I are very different, right? I'm coming from a very different background, but what we wanted to do was similar. How we wanted to do it, a little bit different. But what we were thinking about in terms of inspiring and empowering and motivating women to work as a community to feed our needs individually and collectively, super powerful.
I hear the biggest permission slip in everything you just saw. And I've been keeping a list.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you giving women permission to not have a plan, the 15-point plan. You don't necessarily need it. I hear you giving women permission to test something and learn from it and tweak it, and test again and learn from that and tweak it. Maybe with a survey occasionally.
Right. Occasionally, yes.
I hear you giving women permission to not have to know everything themselves and to ask other people for help and to take care of themselves and not have to feel guilty. I hear you giving women this incredible permission slip that we need to hear once in a while.
Absolutely. And what's great is when we give it to each other and we accept it. So one of the things we talked about in this last thing was about finding you, because you're absolutely right. It's this feeling of you have to do you, April, you. And the only person who can figure that out is April. We can surround you with folks that can ask you the right questions and get you there. But ultimately, you decide, what April should do. We could and should and would ourselves to death, right? I should do this, and I see it a lot in corporate America. Like I should want to move up. Like I got to move up. But I just ask people why. Why? Is it financial? I want to move up because I want to make more money. Because if it is, then let's talk about the more money piece.
It's the money. It's
right?
not the, yeah.
If it's, I want to move up because this person moved up and I know I'm at least as good as him or her. Let's talk about that. But what I realized is I don't know that moving up, I thought it was my goal because it seemed like that's what the goal you're supposed to have when you're in corporate America, right? What's the point if you're not moving up? And what I realized was, yeah, that's not my jam. It's not my jam. But it took me a minute to accept that. Because I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm not as career motivated as other people? They're like, I
should I be taken seriously? Right. All of the stuff.
Like somehow I made that a bad thing. And it's not. It's my thing. And so what I said is, and what I'm saying to myself now is, okay, what does that mean then? Because if the moving up part isn't like the thing, then I started thinking about how do I really enjoy spending my time? Mm-hmm. I like spending my time bringing women together and having these discussions. I'm learning, we're learning. It's cool to watch people do breakthroughs. I like spending time with women or men one-on-one. Really, as an HR person, I have access to a ton of assessments and tools that I've used throughout my life to really help people kind of get to you. And so what I want to give women permission to do is write your own story. Don't read a book and do that person's story. Don't listen to somebody talk and say, well, that sounds like. Figure out what's your story, accept it, love it, own it, and then figure out how you're going to bring that stuff to life. And that, I think, is the key. Like, my story is not your story, and that's okay. I don't have to agree with your story. That's not my job. My job is to support you and to love you and to do whatever I can to help you move forward. Now, if your story is crazy or illegal, that's different. But and again, what I would encourage every woman to do, your friends know. This is the thing that was like my big Oprah aha moment. Your friends know. So if you get people together, so I got friends together, some who had known me for 20 years and some who had known me for 2. And I was kind of talking to them about, here's what's running through my head. And they were like, oh, well, Stephanie, you're good at this. And, this is, you do a really good job at this. And business development is totally your thing. And I'm sitting there like, what are they talking about? Who are you talking about right now? And the intention wasn't necessarily for them to give me a bunch of praise, because they also told me some things I'm not so great at. And so you're not good at this, and you're probably not going to be. So don't do anything that's going to bring that part out. Got it. But your friends have answers. And if each one of us spent a little bit of time, just asked our friends, they'll tell you. They may not give you the answer, but my God, they will get you thinking. And so that's what I did. I just sat down with some friends, and they really helped me think a little bit about what it is and who I am and owning what it is that I wanted to do. I like being on the PTO. I like working in my community to make our schools better for all children. I like that. I don't like having conversations with people who are completely on the opposite spectrum of things that I think are cut and dry, like kids' rights, equality. I mean, if you're in a different place, do you, but I can't. I don't want to spend a lot of time going back and forth with people who are bringing negative energy to my space. So I don't. And that I have given myself permission not to. Because you got to protect you. I mean, that's the thing that I think is so important is as women, and certainly as moms, we spend a lot of our time making sure everyone else is okay. Spouses, significant others, kids, parents, brothers and sisters. And sometimes that's at an expense to our own health and well-being. And each and every one of us needs to take a minute and understand it is not selfish to focus on yourself. And you're not focusing on yourself so that you can be better for everybody else. That's a nice outcome. You focus on yourself so that when you look in the mirror in the morning, you're like, hey girl, I like you. And I mean, I like you every day, but you're living your life in a way that works for you. And you have people in your life who support you through that. And that takes men and women. I have a couple of really great guy friends that are very different than me. But I love them because they bring this perspective that I just don't necessarily see. And for them, I bring perspective that they don't necessarily see or hear or appreciate. So I think that makes a difference.
It's huge. As we're wrapping up today, I want to hear about, so you've got this is a thing now. These are like things that have happened and you've learned from them and you've tested and moved and whatever. What is the future vision of this look like? Is that even a thing that you're thinking about, putting down a path for, or is this still organically? Tell me what the future looks like.
So here's what it's still, so I forgot to mention this, or maybe I did. I'm taking the summer off. So corporate women, pay attention. Every company is not my company. So, hats off to General Mills for this, but I needed a minute. Like, part of what the issue was is I couldn't have all these balls in the air and try to figure out what was going on. Like, something had to be set down. And I like my husband and I like my kids. So I'm like, the only thing that I can maybe take a step back from is working. And so what I'm doing now is really thinking about, what do I want to do? And here's what I've come up with thus far. I like holding these events. I'll probably do them once every other month. I will, have a set, and I'll invite folks and they can invite their friends, and we'll have topics. The topics are going to primarily focus in around this whole concept of finding you, kind of getting comfortable with you, and then acting on that. And then this whole concept of how we transition, women in transition. I'm an outcome-based person. So what I'm working on now is, how do we drive from discussion to action?
Yeah.
And that could be small groups, that could be kind of one-on-one, but really helping people to have dialogue, but dialogue that leads to action. Because dialogue is great, but I want to be able to feel like I got something done.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue to do those. I'm spending some time over the summer really thinking about what are the topics I want to focus in on. But it will probably be things like career transitions or personal transitions, really finding you in your world. So I'll do those, and that, I kind of make available, but I keep it to usually 40 to 50 women so you can have good dialogue. Right. Sometimes it will be discussion. We just talk and I facilitate. Other times I'll have like a guest speaker. So I'm going to do that. The other thing I've been thinking about is writing a book.
Do it. I love it.
On friendships and, what I have learned and what I see and what I know. And so that's kind of what I'm working on now. And quite honestly, what I'm spending most of my summer doing is just hanging with my kids.
Aww.
Just to the point where the littlest one is like, Mommy, you stay downstairs. I'm going to go upstairs.
Let me be specific about what I want to do right now.
You're in my face all the time now. But it's just nice to spend a little bit of time tending to my house. And again, I'm super blessed, April, because I know that everybody doesn't have the opportunity to do this. And so I totally get it. But for me, it has been a blessing. It has just been, and it's only been 3 weeks, but it's been a blessing just to take some deep breaths and focus on the things that I really haven't been able to focus on for myself and for my family. And it's great. And guess what? My company still going to exist.
Yeah.
They are doing just fine and I'm not there.
I love it. Oh my God. I literally, occasionally I have an interview where I could just go completely off the rails and I could sit and talk to somebody for 3 hours. And this is one of those times. And so I'm going to not do that because people would be like circling parking lots listening to your episode. I guarantee it. Before I let you go today, I have to ask you the final question that I ask every single person who's on the podcast, because we are putting together a Spotify Power playlist of motivational music. I have to ask for your contribution to our playlist.
Okay, so I would go with 2.
Love it.
The first one is Party Up by DMX. And because I have had days where I just needed to hear him sing, y'all gonna make me lose my mind.
Oh my God, I'm putting that on when I leave.
The back end of the song has, you have to get the not explicit version.
Headphones.
But, and I only really listen to the chorus, because I have days where I'm like, I just tell me DMX, they're going to make me lose my mind. And it gets me a little hyped so that I can come back down. So,
oh my God.
Party Up, DMX.
Wonderful.
And then there's a song by Mary J. Blige. It's called Be Happy. And in the song, she just says, all I'm trying to do is be happy. Find a love that's real. Just be happy. And so I like to listen to that one because it reminds me something that a friend told me, which is happiness is a choice.
It is.
And when I listen to Mary J. sing that song, it reminds me that that is my choice. And after DMX, you do need someone to bring you down.
Sure.
So
Yin and yang, whatever.
I try not to listen to it on the way to work because then I come in, I'm kind of hyped up. But I think Mary J. Blige has a lot of really good songs, but that one for sure is you just happy.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. I cannot thank you enough for being here. I can't thank you enough for sharing these amazing get-togethers. I don't even know what to call them, events that you're holding. When people are interested in attending or learning more, how can they find you and connect with you?
Great question. And one of the things I'm working on is a name. Right now I call it KJP Consulting because that's my youngest initials. But a marketing friend of mine was like, nope. But if people are interested, the best way is just to shoot me an email. And my email address is SN, so S for Stephanie, N for Nicole, .Pierce, PIERCE 22@gmail.
Wonderful. I'll add that to your show notes page.
Thank
Super easy
you.
for people to find you. Honestly, thank you. This was so wonderful. And you have given us an incredible permission slip to do all the things that we should be doing, but sometimes we just need to hear from somebody else.
And again, thank you, because you have also given us a giant permission slip to learn from each other and to feel great about our stories. So one of the things that makes me feel great is that you even think my story is worthy of anybody listening to. But again, as women, it's a permission slip. We all have great stories. There's something in each and every one of us that's powerful and wonderful. And so I appreciate you taking the time to help each and every one of us find that voice to be able to share it. So, my hat's off to you for doing this great work.
Thank you.
Of course.
I hope you all really enjoyed that conversation with Stephanie Pierce. I walked away from that conversation feeling like I just needed to think about and really contemplate and really dissect who it is that I am, what it is that I want, and how I can continue to craft my life around that. Stephanie's work outside of her job, her passion project, let's call it that, is such an incredible asset to the women who are attending these events because it's something that we all need to do. Think about who we are and what will make us happy in this life that we have. I love the way that Stephanie put it. You got to know you, be you, and do you. And I feel like this conversation with her was a giant permission slip to do exactly that. I loved how individualized Stephanie's work is. She's talking about how a mom who stays at home with her kids, a woman who has decided not to have kids, a woman who is working really hard to advance in her career, a woman who might have other goals than that. They all need to think about what it is that they individually want and what will actually make them happy. Not the thing they think will make them happy, but the why underneath it, and then go after that. I preach on and on so many times on this podcast about how intentional life design is such an important thing to do for yourself because essentially you are moving your life to be in alignment with who you really are. The very first step in that process is knowing yourself inside and out, being absolutely honest with yourself about who you are and using some tools to help you figure that out. And I adore that that's where Stephanie is starting with so many of these groups because knowing yourself and knowing what your strengths and opportunities and goals and passions and all of that are, the honest ones, knowing what those are helps you align the rest of your life around them and make it as vibrant and bold and amazing as possible. I also love that Stephanie talked about the important role that her friends played as she was figuring out, what to do with herself to bring essentially more meaning into her life outside of what she was getting from her job. And she said, your friends know you. They know what you're good at. So ask your friends and talk to them and have them tell you the things that you excel at, and they can help you figure out the direction that you should go. So this totally speaks to tribe. It's totally speaks to having the right people around you and then relying on them in these times when they probably have information that you don't. I also adore that Stephanie was talking about this notion of self-care, and she took such an interesting spin to this topic that we talk about so much. We talk about women and how we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our own health. We need to worry about ourselves in addition to just worrying about those around us. As I sit here bouncing my baby, you can probably hear in the background, she's squeaking and making noises. We need to think about taking care of ourselves. And it was such a cool notion that Stephanie said the women in her group were willing to do it if they felt like the time they were spending away from their family was valuable. That it wasn't just self-indulgent, but that it was of a value of some sort. And that's really the way to think about it. And value can mean a number of things. If it just means you need to rest and your mind needs a rest, that's valuable. Or if it means you need to have an in-depth, meaningful conversation with another adult woman, that's also extremely valuable. If it means you need to gain a new perspective on the world and how it operates, like so many of the women in Stephanie's groups have done, that's also valuable. The point being, if you can think about your self-care activities as having value, it's not just you stepping away from your family. Talk to him, Tate. You just jump right in here, baby girl. It's not just you stepping away from your family. It's you doing something of value for yourself, which is so critically important. I so hope you guys enjoyed this interview this week. I am leaving feeling inspired. I'm leaving feeling focused and just reinvigorated on thinking about the things that really get me passionate and the things that are important to me in my life. Oddly enough, this totally reminds me as my daughter's sitting down here squeaking in her little bouncy chair and I'm recording this, I'm getting to the end of a maternity leave that has been one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And I'm really thinking about how do I continue that feeling of meaning and that feeling of importance? How do I keep that going? Because maternity leave is a very short amount of time. It's a very, if you're in the United States, we don't get enough time to hang out with our little ones when they're first born. But it's a short amount of time, but it's also very meaningful. And I want that feeling of doing something meaningful, even beyond this short amount of time. And so, I just want to be open that I've got this question. I don't have it figured out just yet. And it's something that I'm going to be thinking about a lot and working on a lot in the coming weeks and months. So whatever it is that you have a question about, whatever it is that is fueling your soul or the big thing that won't leave you alone, I want you to honor that question. And I want you to spend some time thinking about it and giving it some attention because it's so important. I love it. I'm going to repeat it again. Stephanie's words: permission to know you, be you, and do you. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.